Hi there, and welcome to this online recorded presentation for the Autism Conference today. In these strange times, it is good to know that we can still come together virtually. My name's Sarah Jane Cruz, and I work for Partners in Advocacy on the My Rights, My Say project, and I'll be co-presenting today with Brenda and Michelle from Who Cares Scotland on the rights of children and young people, and we'll be explaining what our services do to support those young people. Brenda and Michelle will introduce themselves properly when there is a seamless transition from one PowerPoint to another. So as I said, my name is Sarah Jane Cruz, and I coordinate the advocacy side of the My Rights, My Say project. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we do to help young people exercise their rights. So the Education Additional Support for Learning Scotland Act, as amended, came in January 2018, and it extended the rights of children aged 12 to 15. So that's been extended to give many of them the same, or to give young people many of the same rights as their parents and carers, and young people over the age of 16 under the Additional Support for Learning legislation. So as of this date, they can ask their school or local authority to find out if they need extra support, have a say in plans and decisions made about the support they get, have advocacy at meetings about their support, and help them share their views, questions and some plans, make an appeal about certain issues if they're unhappy with the support provided, and to be more involved in resolving disagreements about their support. The local authority themselves must assess the capacity of the young person to make sure they can understand what it is that they're asking for, and using the rights doesn't adversely affect their well-being. So to help young people exercise these rights, the My Rights, My Say service was created. So who does what? The My Rights, My Say service has 4 parts to it, and I'm going to explain those 4 parts because it can get a little bit confusing. So as I said, the My Rights, My Say service has 4 parts. There is Inquire, who provides information and advice on the extended rights via helpline and websites, and they sometimes pass on onward referrals to the relevant partners. So there's ourselves, Partners in Advocacy, who provide independent advocacy for children and young people to help them exercise their rights. There is Children in Scotland, who take the views of children in response to direction from the Additional Support Needs Tribunal, education authorities, and do mediation and adjudication services. So that's if there's a sort of process going on for a young person, they can take their views with regards to that process. And then we also have legal representation in Cairn Legal, and they provide legal advice and representation at the ASN Tribunal for the child or young person. So this sort of diagram will give you an idea of sort of the referral process. So referrals for our service can come from absolutely anywhere. They can come from the young person themselves, they can come from a parent, foster carer, they can come from another third party. They can come from, a teacher telling a young person about the service, they can come from the tribunal, NHS social work, and they can come straight to a service, so they can come directly to, say, for example, Partners in Advocacy, or sometimes what happens is they go to Inquire as a central point of contact for help and advice, and Inquire will let them know about the service and then pass it on to the appropriate part of the service. However, referrals can also move about. At the bottom of the diagram you see the sort of 3 different points with Children in Scotland, Partners in Advocacy and Cairn Legal. So for example, if I had an advocacy partner who was in need of legal representation as their case was going to a tribunal, I can make an onward referral and they would get free legal representation through our partners there as well. So what are the rights of children with additional support needs between 12 and 15? Well, they have 13 different rights as given under the 2018 sort of inception of My Rights, My Say. They have the right to ask the local authority to find out if they have additional support needs, request a specific assessment. So if they were thinking that perhaps they might have something like dyslexia or something like that, they could ask for that assessment to be carried out. They can find out if they need a CSP or ask for a CSP to be reviewed. CSP meaning Coordinated Support Plan. So if they have one of those plans, they can ask for that to be reviewed if they feel like it's no longer meeting their needs. They have rights to have their views heard, so to be involved in decisions about their support, access to support and advocacy, and to have their views heard in meetings about their support. They also have the right to get information or for information to be shared about their additional support need, receive copies of their CSPs, be told about their decisions, about their rights, and be asked if they're happy for the information to be shared when leaving school. So, for example, if a young person was leaving school and going on to college, it would be their decision if they wanted their information about their additional support needs shared with that college or not. They also have rights to be involved in resolving disagreements, so to ask for independent adjudication, to make a reference to the Additional Support Needs Tribunal, and to be asked for views during processes. However, there are things that aren't covered within the legislation, so mediation. Young people can't ask for mediation on their own, but they can ask for their views to be heard within it. The young people don't have the right to ask for a placing request, but again, if a parent is sort of ongoing in the placing request process, then the young person has the right to have their views heard about that. And not included within these rights is children without additional support needs. And we'll clarify sort of in the next slide what an additional support need is when it comes to My Rights, My Say. Because the rights have been extended to children aged 12 to 15, it doesn't automatically mean that their parents have no involvement in exercising these rights for them. Parents have always had rights when it comes to their children's education, and that continues to be the case. However, the development of My Rights, My Say can also support children who perhaps don't have that parental sort of advocate for them, so this allows them to advocate for themselves, sort of children that perhaps looked after, or young carers where their parents might not be able to help them to exercise their rights. They can now do that themselves with the help of an advocate or on their own if they deem that they want to do that. So what is an additional support need? And in terms of My Rights, My Say, do you know, if a young person is struggling with something in school, it's more than likely that they do have an additional support need. So there lots of things are covered. So under disability and health, there's autism, a learning disability, Down syndrome, ADHD, health needs, there's family circumstances, so being a young carer or being looked after in care, travelling communities. There's also learning environment, whereas there's highly able pupils, English as a second language, dyslexia, and social and emotional factors. So experiencing bullying within school, again, the opposite side, restorative, if the young person himself needs support in that respect, suffering a bereavement and social and emotional behavioural needs. These are all things that would count as an additional support need, and that, you know, a young person could exercise their rights through. So a lot of young people don't see themselves as having an additional support need, but in fact, if there's a difficulty within school, then it's more than likely that the My Rights, My Say project would say that there was an additional support need there to be supported. So what can advocacy do to support young people in exercising their rights? So advocacy can help young people by speaking the young person's views at meetings and attend meetings on their behalf, support a young person to request an assessment of their additional support needs, support them to make a request for a CSP or to have that CSP reviewed, help them gain their views to make an application for independent adjudication, support a young person to make a reference to the Additional Support Needs Tribunal. And just sort of as a background to why My Rights, My Say is presenting at the Autism Conference this year, is that the year 2019 to 2020 saw 59% of the 104 young people referred to us had a diagnosis of autism. So for young people with autism who've used their service, it's helped within their sort of educational objectives. These are some quotes from a parent and then some young people that have used the My Rights, My Say service, just to sort of share their experience of what it was like using the service. And I'll go on to talk about within the case study a young person who's used the My Rights, My Say service and how we work to tailor to the individual needs of the young people that use our service. So moving on to the case study, the case study hopefully is going to really sort of emphasise how we work as a service and how we adapt to the young people that need our service. So Kevin was referred to the My Rights My Say service for advocacy in July 2019 by their parent, as they were having issues at school with their additional support needs being met. Kevin's parent heard about the My Rights My Say service through Inquire and made the referral for their son. Kevin had a diagnosis of autism with the PDA presentation and anxiety as well as diabetes, and was finding school impossible to attend at the time of referral. Kevin was allocated to one of our advocacy workers under My Rights My Say, who went on an initial visit to the family home. Upon arriving at the family home, it was overwhelming for Kevin, with his PDA placing a demand upon him meeting new people. The advocacy worker didn't push things and left information on the My Rights My Say project, and when the advocacy worker called later, Kevin's mum said that he did want advocacy, but he didn't feel able to meet them. Kevin wrote the advocacy worker a letter and asked to sign the mandate for the partnership to begin. The advocacy worker and Kevin via his mum worked hard to find a way that worked for Kevin to communicate with his advocacy worker. To start with, it was the advocacy worker phoning to speak to Kevin and his mum over speakerphone, and then Kevin started to join in. Kevin then shared his email address and was able to talk to his advocacy worker over the phone. Having built up such a robust relationship and taken things at Kevin's pace, the advocacy worker gained Kevin's views and shared them at a meeting in school. Kevin had been out of school for a year, had a fear of the building and months of wanting to just start back straight away at school. Kevin then realised it would be too much of a demand for him and was looking for catch-up material to be available for him online. Kevin's guidance teacher and the representative from the Education Authority were really supportive of Kevin accessing education and agreed to send over specific pieces of homework and for Kevin to build a relationship with one of the teachers, with the thought of getting Kevin back into school when he felt able to. At this stage, Kevin's parents had applied for a CSP for Kevin, and a CSP screening meeting took place. The Education Authority went through the process, and it was decided that a CSP wasn't appropriate at this point, as there was no other services that would describe their involvement as significant. Unfortunately, the teacher that was assigned to Kevin fell ill and the online homework didn't continue. The advocacy worker went back to Kevin to see what he wanted to share at the next school meeting, and Kevin had decided that he wanted to come back to school on a full-time timetable, but with the responsibility for looking after his well-being placed on him and asking for support when he felt overwhelmed. Again, the School and Education Authority were supportive with this and asked the advocacy worker to clarify if there was anything they could do to support Kevin. Kevin managed to make school a few times and was building up his confidence before the closure of schools due to COVID-19. My Rights My Say in Advocacy continues to support Kevin by expressing his views to his school and to his Education Authority, and Kevin feels supported and has still never met his advocacy worker, preferring to do his communication online and in the way that works best for him. With Kevin, we were working online and in a virtual way with a young person before COVID, so we took a lot of learning for that, and throughout this sort of pandemic we've been supporting our young people in a way that feels comfortable for them. If you feel that you know someone that would benefit from our service, there's our contact details. Feel free to get in touch. Thank you very much.